Hi everyone, welcome back to our baking section. In your pack you have a bit from this book that we're using for our baking because it's a great resource, and today we're looking at the bit that is called Jesus Calms the Storm, because that's a story we were learning about this morning. So in your pack you should have everything you need in it. The first thing that we do when we are baking, we tie back any long hair, we make sure our sleeves are rolled up, and we wash our hands. So I'm just going to quickly wash my hands. And I know we're all getting very good at washing our hands and making sure that we've washed them properly. So I have washed and dried my hands. So today what we need for our Jesus Calms the Storms are oranges or grapefruit. You can have either. I know that in the pack it says oranges, but I'm using a grapefruit because grapefruits are slightly bigger than oranges. And some jelly. And we're going to make little boats out of the oranges and jelly. There's some bits in this recipe that you'll need an adult for, because you're going to be using hot water and probably a sharp knife. So even if your adult says you're absolutely fine to do the cutting, make sure that they're around about in the kitchen with you so that you don't have any injuries. We want no injuries, no first aid required. That's our plan. So first of all, we're going to take the orange and we're going to cut it in half. So this is where it might need someone to help you. I've cut it in half so you can see the insides of my orange. Now, the next bit you have to be very careful with. You're going to use the knife again, and we're going to carefully go round the edge of the orange. Oh, it's squeezing juice everywhere at me, but that's okay, because what we're going to do is we're going to scoop the inside of the orange out. But we want to be careful, because what we don't want to do is pierce the bottom of the orange. So it's quite fiddly, and we've got to be quite careful. I'm making sure to concentrate so that I don't pierce right through the bottom of the orange. And then what I'm going to use next is a spoon. Now I've got a spoon that has a little serrated edge on it, if you can see. So it's got almost like the edges of a knife. And that helps me dig out the flesh, so the inside of my orange. And it's coming out quite easily. Again, we don't want to be too harsh because we don't want to pierce through the bottom of the skin, because we need the skin intact because it's the bit that's going to hold the jelly. So this bit is a little bit sticky. You will definitely get orangey hands when you're doing this, but that's okay. You could even, if you wanted, squeeze the orange out of the juice first, and then you'd have a nice drink of orange juice, freshly squeezed orange juice. So, whilst I do this, I'm just thinking we're going to turn these oranges into little boats, just like Jesus and his friends would go out in on Lake Galilee. Now, they were fishermen, so fishermen definitely need boats. And this particular time they went out and they were all on the boat and they were fishing, and Jesus fell asleep. Can you imagine falling asleep in a boat? I mean, apart from a really big boat, I can't imagine falling asleep in a boat. Right, I have managed to get as much of the insides out of this as I can, and I'm going to show you. So it's nearly clean on the inside. Don't worry if yours isn't that clean. It's alright. Now, I'm going to put this bit aside. because I can show you what I'm going to do with this one. But first, can you guess what I'm going to do again? Because you can see my hands are all shiny and sticky from the orange juice. I'm going to wash them. I could sing to you for 20 seconds, but I think you'd rather me not sing whilst we're baking. Baking is time for baking, not singing. Okay, so I now have my orange that's caved out, and I'm going to make up the jelly. Now, you can pick any flavour of jelly that you like, because I know some people like orange, and some people like strawberry, and some people like raspberry. It'd help if I could get into this packet of jelly. There we go. So I have picked strawberry because I think the orange and the red will go nice together. So I'm breaking up the jelly into a jug, and the next bit we're going to need hot water for. So that's the bit that we're going to have to be careful with, because it will be very, very, very hot, boiling water, and we don't want any accidents. So you might need an older person or an adult in the kitchen with you whilst you're doing this. Now I have boiled the kettle. I'm just going to reboil it to make sure. And what I'm going to do is I've got a jug here that I can measure out 285 mils with. So that's how much boiling water I'm going to put in first. And whilst I pour this in, I'm thinking a bit about Jesus being asleep in that boat when all of his friends were fishing and busy doing their work. I'm going to pour the boiling water into the jug with the jelly, but be careful because it will be very hot. Ooh. And I'm going to stir it round so that it melts. And as I stir it, I think it's a little bit like the storm would be, because the waves and the wind would be swirling all around, all up in the boat, and Jesus was sleeping during that. Can you imagine how his friends would be feeling? They'd be thinking, oh gosh, this is really scary. There's all these waves and the wind, and there he is just sleeping. And then they woke Jesus up and they said, how can you be asleep? Look, we're all going to drown. The water and the waves are coming in the boat, and all the wind is blowing around. And Jesus got up and said, why are you so afraid? All I need to say is, be still. And the waves and the wind stopped, and the storm calmed straight away. And Jesus used this as a way to show his friends that they could trust him. They could trust him even when the waves and the wind were blowing all over the place and it was a bit scary and stormy. Just as much as they could trust him when the lake was still and the waters were calm. Right. For the jelly, next what I'm going to do is measure out 285 mils of cold water. And that's going to go in to this. Now remember, this will still be very hot because it's the hot water that we've got in it first, and even though we're adding in cold water, it's still hot. Well, this is going to be very full. I'm going to have to be very careful with this. I'm going to give it a few more very careful stirs because I don't want it to go everywhere. Now, the next part of our instructions for our recipe tell us to pour it into the orange halves that we prepared these earlier. So we've taken out the flesh, and I've got a grapefruit here as well because the grapefruit is slightly bigger, and I thought I'd make a big boat to show you all. So we're going to put it in. It tells you in the Bake Through the Bible recipe to put it on a plate. But I'm a little bit clumsy, and when I put things on a plate, can you see what happens? It wiggles all around. So I've got these little tubs where I can put the oranges in next to one another, and they're kind of supported by each other rather than wobbling all over the place, because it would just go everywhere and then I would get in trouble and I'd have to clear it up. Because that's what you do if you've been using the kitchen, you have to clear it up at the end of you. So this part you might need an adult to help you with. We're going to pour the jelly into the orange. Now I have definitely spilled that, so that's why I'm saying you might need an adult to give you a hand, because even me being very careful and trying my best, I have spilled a little bit, but that's okay because I will clear it up. I'm going to move this over closer to you. Can you see that? So my oranges now have my jelly inside them, and I'm going to fill these ones as well. And the next thing I'm going to do is put these in the fridge. Now these need to stay in the fridge for a wee while, as long as it'll take for the jelly to set. Now that could be up to 6 hours, so you could do this in the evening and leave this overnight so that when you get up in the morning you can do the next stage. So that's where we are just now. We've got our little boats prepared, and we've thought about how the waves and the wind, the jelly was like the waves and the wind coming into the boat, and then Jesus said stop, and it's nice and calm. So I'm about to put this into my fridge, and then I'll come back when it is set, so that will probably be tomorrow for me, and you can see the next bit next. Hi everyone, so I have now left my oranges with the jelly in them till the jelly is set, so you can see still wobbles a bit, but it is set. And what I'm going to do now is I'm going to cut these oranges or grapefruits, whatever you've put them in half. Now you will probably need an adult or someone who's good with a knife for this bit, because it's a wee bit tricky. You need quite a sharp knife, and I'm going to cut right down through the centre, and hopefully the jelly will stay in one piece. There we go. That's not too bad. So I'm going to pop that one back in there, and you can see I have my little jelly boat and my bit of my orange. Now what I've done next is, in your activity pack you should have some wee triangles. Now you might be wondering what these are for, but these are to make masts for your little jelly boats. To remind us that it was Jesus that was in the boat in the storm, and he was the one that calmed the water and reassured the disciples. So I've taken a Sharpie and I've cut out my little triangle, and I'm going to write on it with the smaller point out the way. So I'm going to write a big J for Jesus. And then I've got some cocktail sticks, and what I do is, now you have to make sure not to do this too close to the edge, because otherwise you'll end up with a hole in it ripping through. You push your cocktail stick through,